So, category number 12 is very important because due to the idolatry alone, they are number 74 sexual perverts. This is something that's really important to understand. Now, in our culture, there's going to be a lot of people who say there is no such thing as a sexual pervert. Don't even say that. That's just what they're into, and it's okay as long as people are consenting, and that's even loving to try to make each other happy, right? But I'm talking about people who care about moral standards, decency, tradition of conservatism, and want to please God and the Creator and the order that He has. Even if the person is, you could say, within sexual norms and they don't have fetishes or whatever, and they're even saying that they want to be married or whatever, they're going to be perverted in their sexuality, and it's usually going to show through fetishes and indecency. Indecent. Talking about Sodom and Gomorrah level of indecency, if you know what that means. They're going to probably be perverted with, porn or whatever. Things that are common these days are perversions, like oral, that's a perversion. And I know that's not going to be popular, but I'm going to heaven and I'm going to say the truth. I'm not going to hell with them. Just saying, with God's help. So I'm going to get into it a little bit that the way that these people are perverted is the idolatry, and a lot of times it will come through as physical sexual perversions, including abstinence in a marriage, unagreed to abstinence, the cerebral narcissist who suddenly is not interested in you because you're a Madonna or you're a whore, and that kind of psychological insanity. That's a perversion. But the biggest reason that it's a perversion is because they've made an idol out of themselves or out of you. If someone is super, super doll with lots of surgeries, lots of makeup, lots of doll to the max, that can be a huge sign of idolatry and perversion. And I mean, it's not wrong to look nice and to look attractive, but there is a certain imbalance where people are wondering, why do marriages not work? And it's things like that. And I know a huge reason why marriages don't work anymore is a lot of breakdown of society and financial issues. But when something is too idolatrous, back to the idea of perfection standards that are not possible and not possible long term, and that's too much the focus. That's all a perversion. And when someone thinks that they're a special idol and they're a special celebrity and they have to be treated a special way, that is a perversion in which their partner is going to be horribly abused, because the partner becomes a worshiper of something other than God. That's a whole lot of abuse in a lot of different ways that ends in a lot of damage and death. Maximum abuse, maximum, that you're getting more into like a harem idea, or a slave idea. That's what you're dealing with, and that's why a lot of them expect to be able to beat, to dominate, to utterly control every part of your life, or force you to do things because they're God. There's just so many levels that's not going to be a proper healthy attachment. It's not going to be blessed. It's not going to last long term, not really. And it's never going to be a healthy union where you can have intimacy. It's not going to be proper intimacy. And usually it's filled with immoral practices. And I hope I've made that clear enough. But there was a certain point where it hit me. This person who was like a celebrity, this was many, many years ago. This celebrity was trying to make me interested in them. And I tried at first, like I tried to be interested in them back, but it was never real. It wasn't real. They never saw me. They never connected with me. They never appreciated me as much as I just really appreciated them. They never gave toward me the way I gave toward them, because it was all about them, and it was all about, there was a lot of distance and demands and things like that. And I started realizing this is a pervert. The reason why this person has never been married is that they are a sexual pervert. There was another person that had never been married, and it's because they had something like what people are identifying as a spirit spouse. That's a form of a perversion, where they, in their mind, they're sleeping with a fantasy a lot. They're imagining that they're sleeping with a fantasy, and that's another demonic daydream issue, where that's not just daydreams, that's a spirit. And another way that someone can be like controlled in a narcissistic fantasy of the ultimate love, and it can be very addictive because in their daydream everything's perfect, right? This is a pervert. So many times, if not every time, these guys are a pervert, and any relationship with them is perverted. That's another reason why you're never jealous of the new supply. That's a perversion. And it's just as perverted as anything else you would look at of two complete strangers you don't know that's an obvious perversion you would laugh at or say, oh my goodness, that poor situation. It's the same way, and it's not to be, anything you would ever want. And even though they don't necessarily intend it, it's going to be perverted, sadly, and not blessed. And so this is often why we hear complaints of the supply is saying that they're being drawn into perversions. And a lot of times, like if you, this is one thing I've heard of a lot, if you have a standard of decency that you will not allow in the bedroom, they will deliberately push those standards into things that are perversions and harmful to your body, and like Sodom and Gomorrah, until they figure out something that will addict you, or something that, they'll get a devil in there and addict you to something bad. And now it's going to be 10 times harder to leave them or to be normal again after that. So I've heard of that happening too many times. And a lot of times that will become very demonic, because that is like a very, something that God calls an abomination. A lot of times what happens in the bedroom is things that God calls an abomination. And that very easily becomes demonic. And this is another thing to keep in mind, guys, that you can't, pleasure and addicting to pleasure and high degrees of pleasure are not going to be a standard for what is right and wrong. Because some people get pleasure from small children or animals. Just think of it like that. Some people get intense pleasure from that, and that's demonic. For the sake of pleasure, this is the question. For the sake of pleasure, would you trade places with them? Would you say, oh yeah, I want to know pleasure, so I'll just go anywhere and do anything? How far does it go? And that's a lot of times where porn will lead people, is further and further onto them kind of routes where it's just out of control. But that's why you need to hold to your standards and say, I don't care if I can get some kind of pleasure in some area that is a perversion, is because we need to see it the same way as something that we know is way out there, where way beyond your standard of, I'm not interested in even looking for any degree of pleasure that a so-called demon can give me, even though I'm completely repulsed and disgusted and don't want to even think of that. And it's terrible to bring that up, but that's the same thing. I'm not going to be any level of perverted. I'm not going to be any level of an abomination for any level of pleasure, because the pleasure isn't coming from you guys. It's not coming from you. At that point, the pleasure is coming from the demonic, is what I'm trying to say. A demon can give you any level of pleasure. You need to be aware that a demon can give you some kind of levels of pleasure, and that kind of like just needs to be a line in your mind of, I'm just not going to cross that line. These are the things of take up your cross and follow the Lord, and just don't. You have standards, you have statutes, boundaries, and it keeps you from being enslaved by people who would just own you. It's worth it. Just don't even go there. Have standards. And there's all sorts of terrible, terrible perversions that a devil can give you pleasure with. All sorts. Some sexual, some not. All sorts of terrible perversions that a devil could give a person. Maybe not you if you're saved and with God for a long time. But there's all sorts of pleasure that devils can give people for doing horribly, horribly, horribly perverted things. So I guess the question you would ask yourself is, how far down that line would you go? Would you even tiptoe toward that line? It's just no. For a Christian, it's no. I don't want any devil giving me any pleasure, because that only makes me enslaved to something evil. That just needs to be. We are too pleasure oriented, and pleasure is our God in this society. Pleasure and power. Things like that. So, a lot of things are common in the bedroom that are complete perversions. That's why I love being super straight and prudish, if you will. Yeah, because all sorts of, once you start going down the road of being a little bit perverted or everybody's doing it, you get caught into all kinds of bad. I hear all kind of bad stories all the time of somebody let their standard go a little bit, so just anything went, and then before they knew it, it just got so bad, and then they got drunk, and then everybody's doing it, and then on and on and on until they're completely taken over by one of these demonic narcissists. You think, yeah, have a standard. You have to have a standard and a line, and say, I'm not crossing that line, and it's evil. You know, some common standards would be no threesomes, no sodomy, no fetishes, no oral, things like that. And anybody, I've done got to where anybody that's making that a demand or saying that that's not really sexual, so therefore you can do that outside of marriage, those are some shady people who are these kinds of narcissists who will lead you down the road to hell in a heartbeat. That's how they get you there. And they are putting demons behind it and enslaving you and trapping you. So no, absolutely no. I'm even to where I'm not going to be like doing all this kissing that people do and all that. No. Of course, we're getting into the very end times to where it's super obvious that people are being led astray left and right by every means possible. So drawing hardcore standards aren't what they used to be, but I've had good standards for a long time that have kept me pretty safe from a lot of mess. So I'm grateful for the path I've walked, and if someone has walked that path and learned their lesson and changed, well, good for them. You know, that's also a lot of good to be said about that too. I'm just trying to say some things that people are trying to call normal are big traps, and the people who are caught up thinking that that's normal, thinking that it's excusable, and thinking that that's okay, God help you, because you're going to need it. Go ahead, go down that path and see where it leads to. God help you. May God have mercy on your soul, because you're going to need it. That's all I can say. This is why it's idolatry. It doesn't put God first. It puts things like pleasure or sin or what someone's going to think about me first, you know. I won't fit into the social norms. I'll seem strange. These days, it's very wonderful to be. It's wonderful to be strange in Sodom and Gomorrah. Yes, it's wonderful to be different. Sometimes the abuser loves to smash down your moral boundaries just to prove that they can dominate you. So how sad if you let someone cross a line because you're being sweet and nice and you hated doing it. This happens way too often. You hated yourself for doing it, but you bought their lie about some terrible sad story, and that lie of a terrible sad story let you just made them God, basically. That's what I'm warning about. It made them God, and you let them do horrible things you didn't agree with. And all they were in it is to prove that they could control you for pride. So just beware of how evil it can really be, and how very horrible, how much it can steal from you. Any level of relationship with this person is horribly abnormal and unhealthy. That's why it's a perversion. Complete with demonic power, traps, and immoral practices. They are what you'll usually find whenever another blessing of having these very strong boundaries of not letting someone do perversions in your relationship is that the new supply, including relations before marriage and everything, the new supply is allowing this. They're allowing it wide open. And so if that happens, and if they're allowing all sorts of immorality and boundaries lowered and smashed through and all this, that's like idolatry. That's like every level of what goes to the lake of fire in the book that I read. I'm just saying. Nothing to envy at all. It's all very just sad, perverted, and idolatrous. and things you don't do, and things that you don't belong part of. These are complete strange, bizarre strangers. That's all it is. And just like any other lost and going to hell people on the earth, and there's a lot of them, and just it's sad, and walk away, and don't focus on them or it. Focus elsewhere. They don't deserve your focus. Once more. But sometimes the one part of the trap will be that they'll marry very quickly, Sometimes that's a perversion. I would say within 6 weeks. These days especially, when there's so much danger. Marriage, very quick whirlwind romance within 6 weeks. Come on. Yeah. Saying that it's love at first sight. You're engaged within 6 weeks. That's probably minimum a manipulation tactic to hook somebody that the narcissist once more don't deserve, that kind of deal. But anyway, getting you drunk to trick you into bed and saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, the alcohol took me over," when that was their plan the whole time. So, another thing that's perverted with these people is that when they're not normal, when they've had thousands of partners, and they probably still do. I'm not trying to be judgmental, y'all. I'm being normal, and it sounds horrible because our society is horrible. Just saying, is that they're probably thinking about other people when they're with you anyway. Once more, don't envy the supply. It's cheap, sick, and perverted. They're always cheating on whoever they're with. They're always wanting to hurt them, and it's just like, no, you do not want to be a object to be used. Just no. So when you're with these people, like if you knew what was on their mind when they're with you and when they're trying to be with you or want to be with you or whatever, you would be like so turned off or angry. And it's not a, oh, how cute, it's a lover spat. No. You would be silent if there was a safe way to do it. Silently collecting your things and leaving and never looking back. Yeah. So, idolatry. And sometimes you just have to know, and it's not arrogance, you have to know this is the pathway of fools. When you see like the epitome of foolishness with these things in life, of people just really messing up their life and doing the most foolishest things ever, that's this. That is this, even though it's everywhere now. This is a pathway of fools, and it is everywhere, so it's hard to make the differentiation anymore, but this is exactly what it is. This is a pathway of fools and foolishness, to be so addicted, pleasure-oriented, out of reality, using people for pleasure and power, and if somebody thinks you're a trophy and is using you as a trophy, that's a perversion, because it's a matter of time before that fails, and then they're going to go on to another trophy that like 20 years younger than you. That's a perversion. Once more, the reason why a lot of people are shocked at how quickly they were dumped and replaced, and then suddenly their significant other becomes a complete stranger, and a complete abusive stranger, is because it was a perversion the whole time. The whole time it was perverted. It wasn't real. It wasn't intimate. And the person did not even see them, and did not care about them, and did not love them. And there was no intimacy, and it wasn't real. That's what I mean by pervert. This is a perversion. And everything about it is perverted. Not just the physical part. It's all perverted. The thinking, the emotions, the flattery, the love bombing, even the way they give you flowers. It's perverted. The way they do a ring. That's another reason why you laugh when you see them do this to the new supply, to put it in everybody's face. Using a new supply to put it all in everybody's face at a certain level of, look how powerful I am, or look how my new thing, I'm a 6-year-old child with a new toy even. That's all perverted. Especially when they're deliberately trying to hurt other people. It's a perversion. Just like any other kind of porn habit and things like this will never satisfy you. And it does not fulfill the Christ and the bride model. The person who's bored with healthy, they're bored with day to day, they're bored with getting bills paid, They're bored with healthy and normal. They mock healthy and normal, and they've been that way since their teens and preteens. It's all a perversion. Back to this idea that they've been doing this kind of sorcery in their life, and therefore they've been perverted probably for decades by the time you meet them, and there's powerful spirits involved. And this person is somewhere in their mind that's not even thinkable to you. It's unthinkable. I guess think about that movie American Psycho or something. It's unthinkable. This situation, it promises you everything, but it takes everything away from you and leaves you in the worst state possible. And so their perversion displeases God, which is the worst thing you ever want to do. It displeases God. It always harms people. It invites all sorts of evil. It's cursed. Again, it's cursed and not blessable. And so it's not going to work anyway. And it messes up the brain in like irreparable ways. It messes up people's thinking, their brain, the way they see the world, the way they interact. It gets worse and worse. People underestimate how cursed sexual perversion is. And it's so deep into our culture and society. And it's the way of the world, and it's very cursed. It's not intimate. It doesn't fulfill. It subtracts. And it may seem fulfilling temporarily, but a fool will be fooled by that. And they will mock these ideas. They'll mock you and say you're old and backward. And what do you know? You don't know what you're even talking about. So without realizing it, the way, this is an important differentiation too, getting caught up with one of these people doesn't make you a pervert like them. Because they use the lies, and they use the hooks, and they use the fact that you have empathy for them, and that you care about people. So a lot of their hooks isn't just all physical. And it doesn't make you perverted too, because there should be some desirability and there should be an attraction. But the perversion comes like in the balance issue of the lack of a balance and how they're going to treat you. The perversion is coming from them and making you into such an idol, expecting that of you for life, that no one can uphold, the ever-moving goalpost. These things corrupt. They're abnormal, they're unhealthy. And so, usually the narcissist is under the category of perversion, perverted. They're mentally and emotionally, and oftentimes physically. And they're using you. They are using you to support all of their perversions. They're using your talents, your skills, your abilities, your resources. That you would want to be going into the kingdom of heaven so you can get your rewards properly and have your life go right. But they will use everything you have to support their mental perversion and their emotional perversions and a lot of times their physical perversion in their 75 serial fornicator, sleeping all around, 76 pornography addictions, even soft porn that we see many places today, even in public, Instagram, Facebook, poster board ads. Not all these are avoidable, but some people deliberately go out of their way to see things like this. Soft porn on television, the constant scenes on television, the constant cleavage, the constant lack of clothes, that people deliberately have a TV in their house so they can see the woman on the treadmill at every commercial that doesn't have any clothes on. And they're a preacher and they're pretending like it's acceptable and all this. Pornography, it's all porn. 77, unclean. 78, whoremonger. 79, idolater. 80, sodomite, including oral. 81, rapist. Sometimes they violently rape you. And sometimes they emotionally and psychologically rape you. I would include the rapist part of any form of sexual abuse, including the ways that these people will discard. Any time that they were with you physically after they lied to you to get you in that position, in marriage or not. Like if someone has a whole family, a whole wife, with children in another state, and they lie to you that they're single and marry you, and you start a relationship, that can be rape. Unsuspecting, because you're not agreeing to what they're agreeing to. This is just evil. You're not agreeing to that. You're being coerced into something and lied to. So they're willing to take advantage of the disadvantage. They con people very fast into a sexual relationship with their extreme manipulation. They date rape. They will take advantage of passed out and drunk people or people who are extremely lied to or otherwise disadvantaged. They will cheat on their partners. Vows mean nothing. Of course they'll marry, especially to look good in public. But vows don't mean anything. It just means that they have their wife or husband super tricked. Ha ha ha. I tricked them with vows. I tricked them in front of their family and wore certain clothes and walked down an aisle and signed a paper and made vows and swapped rings. Means nothing. It means my lifestyle will go on as usual. I just have to be sneakier about it, maybe, is what they're thinking. So they're an emotional mental rapist when they triangulate supplies between each other, unprotected relations without letting you know. And if you contracted a disease from them, they will say you contracted the disease from someone you're sleeping with when you're being super faithful. Once more, I would probably go to jail. So, all sorts of sexual abuse, coercion, and manipulation. So this goes under the category of a sexual pervert, including a violent rapist. And you need to always see them as a pervert. Just a weird, wicked, not healthy pervert, period. So we're going on to category 13, number 82. This matches this category we covered of pride. And it's a special thing the Bible calls high-minded, number 82, high-minded.